Hello and welcome back to Paddock and Track, the show where we bring you news on and off the track. I'm Max and I'm here as always with my co-host Amaan.
What's up, guys?
And today we have our very special episode about the first race of the F1 season. Are you excited for this new season?
I am very excited for the new season, and we see plenty of action in the first
Definitely,
one.
Yep. So Bahrain, if you don't know, is the first race of the season. Bahrain is a very small country,
Yes.
most kind of an island, really. But it makes for a lot of racing action in F1 and WEC, I know. And I believe maybe MotoGP, but I'm not sure on that. Don't quote me on that. But I think we had a pretty good race.
Yeah.
I would say the major losers here are Alpine.
Yeah, 100%. All right there, yep.
Yeah, definitely. A very, very bad start to the season for Alpine. Qualifying last and second to last.
Yes.
Ocon in 19th, Gasly in 20th.
They are very much not beating the tractor allegations
No,
on this
no, no.
one.
And also, Alpine has lost a lot of their technical team.
Yes.
A lot of people have been leaving. They're supposedly restructuring, but I think it's really they
Yeah, I
lost
heard
so many people.
they split like two mechanical roles into like three.
Yeah.
And they're like trying to restructure into like their new plan, which I'm not too sure about right now.
Yeah, I don't know how
So-
that's gonna go out for them. But in all right qualifying for the new RB team,
Yes.
clearly they did not do what people had feared and just copied the RB19 chassis, because they're not that fast. But Ricardo and Tsunoda coming in solid positions for this from qualifying.
Yeah.
Not
I
great, but
mean,
not horrible.
as we said, our predictions before, when we did our predictions, we were predicting they were gonna be like lower on it, but moving up, I think they're gonna do so really make a difference this season when driving.
Definitely. And I think we also see a clear shift in the dynamic of the Ferrari team.
Yes.
Throughout the race, I think Sainz was a faster driver throughout the race.
He definitely was.
But Leclerc was clearly faster over a single lap because he out-qualified his teammate. Leclerc was qualified second and Sainz qualified fourth.
Yes.
So a very interesting shift sort of in the dynamic of Ferrari. And it kind of makes Ferrari's choice to get rid of Sainz seem a lot worse now.
It does, definitely, but I feel like Leclerc also, they could defend Leclerc if Leclerc performs well this season, like very well. He needs to exceed the expectations, and if not, then it's going to make them seem like very much losers
That's the
in
thing,
getting
yeah.
rid of Carlos Sainz.
And I don't think that he really has looked like that so far.
Yeah.
So it is, that is definitely concerning for, you don't want to see that if you're the Ferrari team.
Yes, 100%.
And then, yeah, I think we could just hop right into the race.
All right, yeah, let's do this.
So again, right off the start, we see Verstappen coming across the track to cut off Leclerc.
Yeah.
Nice move by him just to cover off that inside line and prevent more progress from Leclerc.
Yes.
But of course, Verstappen had a very good start, which we see a lot from him. And then initially, what I noticed, and I thought this was very interesting, was Sargent passing Ricardo. That move stuck for a while, and I think it was really interesting to see because Ricardo, of course, is a driver that has a lot more experience.
Yes, definitely.
Compared to Sargent, and it was a very interesting thing to see from Logan.
I mean, really wasn't watching that part. I was more focused on the front of the grid,
Yeah.
but I'm saying you being more technical and more advanced on this situation know that these drivers can really make noise from the back of the grid, and paying attention is really nice to see.
Yeah, and then we see Hulkenberg and Stroll have a collision going into turn one. Chaos for them, honestly. Hulkenberg sort of hit the back of Stroll, spun him around.
Yes.
And then Bottas actually ended up taking damage too because he ran into the back of Hulkenberg a little bit. So really the main catalyst may have been Bottas.
Bottas, yes. Bottas did, yeah. And then with Stroll, he was down in P19 for
P19.
quite a while, but he did make a nice recovery in the race.
Yeah, to be fair, there is a lot of hate on Stroll, and it's warranted for most of the time because, of course, he is mostly on that Aston Martin team because his dad owns so much.
Yep.
But he did have a good recovery.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. And then Leclerc had a lot of troubles with his brakes. It seemed as though they were overheating when he was close behind a car. There's a lot of dirty air coming off of those cars.
Yes.
Which is obviously, of course, bad for Leclerc. He had a bunch of lockups, which really hurt his race pace.
Which did. I mean, that also led him to being passed by Sainz twice, which is not a great look for him. But as well, not to discredit him, though, because a lot of other cars were also experiencing issues with the first race.
Yes. And we can get to that later in the race with Williams. But and then we see Ocon and Gasly again. They started very, very low.
Yeah.
They really did not make a comeback during the race. A very bad first race for Audi.
Very, very much.
Perez had really good pace. He had a bad quali, right? He started in P5.
He did.
Behind both Ferraris, but he was much faster than those Ferraris.
He was. As you can see, later we'll talk about the final standings, but he did finish higher than both Ferraris.
And then the big thing was Sargent goes off the track. This is a little later into the race now, but Sargent has a big lockup. Now, this was partially due to the brand new Williams steering wheel.
Yes, it
which
is.
supposedly had a glitch during the race, and Albon was having problems with it too. So clearly, this is not something that's just limited to Sargent.
So before you go and judge Logan so harshly, we have to see, because it was the car this time around, believe it or not, but we definitely have to see in the future as well.
Yeah, so if you don't know, Williams this year has a brand new steering wheel.
Yes.
Most of the teams basically keep their steering wheels the same across the years, maybe a couple of tweaks here and there. Mm-hmm. But Williams, for a very long time, had their screen sort of on, like, if you want to think about it like a regular car, on the dashboard. So it was mounted to the chassis instead of the steering wheel itself.
Yes.
So the steering wheel was a separate piece. The screen was not on it. Whereas every other car except Williams has the screen on their steering wheel. So this year, Williams changed it up. They put the screen on their steering wheel. They had a lot of problems.
Yes.
Again, like we said with Sargent, he went way off. It took him a while to get back going.
There was thoughts that he actually might have retired, but he didn't, because he just recovered and went back on the pace. But it was just not enough to really get him back in the race.
And then we saw Albon having problems with his steering wheel too, saying that he couldn't they were asking him to like change a switch, and he was saying like he couldn't do it. I think he couldn't see it, was what they were saying on the commentary. His screen was too bright for a night race, and he couldn't see the buttons.
Okay.
Another thing I noticed, if you can probably find a picture at this point. I was able to find one on Google. There's a picture of the Williams steering wheel.
Yes.
They were going down the back straight, sort of, if you will, after turn. I think it is after turn 10, I believe.
It was
that's straight. The if you look at the screen on the steering wheel, you could see it in the broadcast too. It says "car too hot," in big letters. So this was a problem, not with the steering wheel so much for this, but
for the cooling system of the car.
Yeah, but even further than that, I think it might have been something with the Mercedes engine.
Oh, and we see Mercedes as well having trouble with their engine as well.
So, because Russell had an issue with his power unit.
Yes.
He wasn't able to use his overtake button, and he had to charge the battery a lot. And Hamilton was having he thought he was having a battery issue. Really, it was just because he used it all. But also, they were having a lot of overheating problems on those Mercedes engines.
Yes.
So that's something to watch out for Williams, and for Mercedes.
Definitely.
That could definitely be a big problem down the line.
Yes.
And also McLaren. But McLaren didn't seem to have those issues. McLaren, of course, also does have a Mercedes engine.
Yes.
But they didn't seem to have those issues. They talked with Zach Brown during the race, and he said they weren't having any kind of issues. So hopefully that continues for McLaren.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I have them high in finishing in the constructors, so...
The other thing I noticed while watching the race, that Sauber car, if that's what we're calling it now, right?
Yes.
It really stands out.
It does really stand out.
It's not the fastest, but it looks good.
It does look good. When looking at coming out of the pits, we can see them coming. Yeah. Everyone can see them coming, and I think that's the point. Yeah. I mean, if you're like the brands on that car, you really want to see that car, and you'll like notice it as well.
But it was a nice difference.
It was a nice contrast, yes, because you could see all the carbon fiber on the rest of the cars, but it was a nice contrast. I liked it.
Yeah.
But speaking of, though, we can say that Zhou finished, what is it called, 11th place?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see how that happens.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes for them in the future.
Yes.
Hamilton also reported that his seat was broken. So I don't exactly know what that means, but I don't know. Obviously, that's a problem for them because there's so much G-force.
Yes.
If they're shifting around in the seat, that's obviously not a good thing for them.
Yes.
But what do they mean when he says that his seat is broken?
I don't know. Was it like loose or was there like he couldn't adjust something?
But the seats aren't really adjustable, so I don't really know what he was talking about.
Was it like an excuse trying to save his face? I don't know.
I'm not sure, but he didn't do great in that race,
yeah.
so maybe. And Leclerc's tire life was looking very, very good on those hard tires. Leclerc was able to extend for a long time.
Yes, he definitely did.
I think that was really good for Ferrari. They definitely needed that after last year. Sometimes they had struggles with their tire degradation. Mm-hmm. So seeing them have very good tire life is definitely important.
Yeah, and also when looking back at when they were doing testing on the cars, we saw that Red Bull had almost no tire degradation. How do you say it?
Degradation. Yeah,
degradation.
It was very low for them.
It was very low for them, and it was a point of concern for these other cars because they were like rapidly degrading. So that's really good for Ferrari, knowing that their tire life can be withstood for a very long time.
Yeah, definitely. And then we see Bottas as we get to more of the pit stops. Bottas had a very, very slow stop.
Yeah.
A 52.4 second stop.
Yeah.
It basically what happened is the wheel nut that they have on these tires, because they have essentially one nut that goes on the wheel, and the wheel nut on the tire, so they're kind of like pre-mounted on there so they can do it quickly, but it was not like, I'm not sure exactly what was happening. It's hard to tell, of course, but either maybe it just wasn't like going on right, or something was happening. So they brought the mechanic a new wheel nut, and then they started taking the tire away. But they can't mix and match sets.
Yes.
So they had to bring the tire back, and then it was a mess.
It was
sorry before.
And it kind of degraded his race a lot. So he basically, that's what happened.
Albon also had, again, as we said, Albon had some engine problems. Again, like we said earlier, overheating problems. And then the RB seemed to be faster than Haas at some point.
At some point but getting there, the V carb really struggled against that Haas. Who was it that was there? Which Haas was that?
I believe it's Hülkenberg.
Hülkenberg, yes. So both the V carbs were like fighting to get a place over him, but what was it that happened? Like the team orders?
So RB basically told Tsunoda to let Ricciardo by, but he kind of let him by at a horrible spot because he let him through at a corner, which is not really what you want to do when you're swapping positions. The best thing to do is like get to a straight and then you kind of slow down and move over. Then you let your teammate go through.
Yes.
Yuki didn't do that because
he thought he could catch.
Yeah,
Hülkenberg.
On the radio he was complaining. He was like, I could have gotten him. I could have passed him. I just need more time. And the fact that they let Ricciardo through, I think, definitely affected Yuki.
It did affect Yuki, but also Ricciardo. We can see from the team orders that Ricciardo also had a new fresh pair of tires.
Yes.
So he definitely had the better pace to catch Hülkenberg.
Yeah.
But I could see where Tsunoda's coming from because he was really trying to like catch him.
Plus the problem is, it was Magnussen. Sorry, they were trying.
It was Magnussen. Oh, okay.
But Ricciardo didn't pass him.
Yeah, he didn't.
So at the end of the day, it really didn't matter.
End of the day, nothing happened.
Yeah. So then if you look, there is a clip of Ricciardo and Tsunoda on I don't know exactly what to call it, the lap after the race is done. They're just going back to the pits.
Yes.
Ricciardo and Tsunoda were like fighting basically. Tsunoda was being really aggressive on that lap.
Yes.
And he had a big lockup, which could have been very bad for both of them.
Very bad.
So yeah, but so possibly some internal problems in RB.
I mean, also in the past we've seen that Yuki isn't the most mature person when it comes to it, and he really gets it really very like, well, let's say emotional when driving a car, and this definitely is something to see going forward. But we're already having some drama already early in the season.
Yeah. And then we also noticed, I noticed at least on lap 41, Hamilton was on the radio complaining that these guys are fast. I assume in reference to Norris and Piastri. Norris was in front of him and Piastri behind him.
Yes.
I assume that's who he was talking about. But what's interesting is those two cars don't seem very dissimilar, and they had talked about the Mercedes straight line speed.
Yes.
So maybe he's talking more in the corners, but I'm not sure exactly where
I'm not sure, but I'm saying that's not good for the Mercedes car
Definitely
at
not,
all,
definitely not.
because they're supposed to be the improving and to get over the hump, to get better than
Yeah.
Ferrari and McLaren.
Yeah.
But if they're like the same as McLaren, then that's not really a good sign at all. And for Hamilton's last season, that's really bad look for them as well.
But I've noticed, I feel like Hamilton's complaining a lot more than Russell.
He definitely is, and I feel like he's just doing it because he knows his last season, but time will tell.
And he didn't place as high as Russell
He
either.
did not at all.
And so it's very interesting to me to see that Hamilton seems to be having all these issues and Russell really isn't. So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting thing for me. To see maybe they're giving preference to George, which makes sense.
Which, yes, it does.
But also, is Hamilton just complaining to complain, or is it a real issue?
Or I think maybe sabotage could be in effect. I
don't
don't know.
about that, because you still want the points. Because at the end of the day, the amount, however many points you get and how high you are in the championship determines how much money you get.
Yeah, you're right.
So probably not that.
Maybe it's too drastic. It's too early to tell what's going to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, we have to see future races for that to actually happen.
Definitely. Now we see Lando complaining a lot about the car throughout the race, but Hamilton, he was still faster than Hamilton.
Yes.
So he was complaining. I don't know. I thought it was weird that he was complaining because he really wasn't slow.
Yeah.
But he seemed to be having issues, but it didn't seem like those issues were that important.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And then as Leclerc got closer to Russell towards the end of the race, and I believe he passed him. Yes, he did pass him towards the end of the race. Leclerc started to complain about his brakes more and more. So again, this goes back to the dirty air behind the cars, right? So Leclerc's brake problems seem to be mostly just based on that air and lack of cooling. Because when he was by himself, he seemed totally fine. He stopped complaining.
Yes.
So it's probably mostly related to being behind other cars
and just the air that's coming through the
Yeah.
car as well. I mean, yeah, it's really concerning though for that to happen for Ferrari,
Definitely.
because how are you gonna win races if you can't like pass, or you're easily gonna get passed as well.
Yeah. And then we see Tsunoda on lap 55. So right towards the end of the race, Tsunoda says on the radio he needs to speed up, and he's not fast at all. In reference to Ricardo, of course.
I mean, that's just increasing that tension they have between them, and which is really not good for the chemistry going on for this team.
Definitely not.
And if they really want to make something happen, they really need to like lock in and come together.
But what's strange too is it's like Ricardo should have been a lot faster than he was.
Which, yeah, it's a valid point because he had the fresh tires.
Yeah, he had fresh softs. Yuki was on old hards. It seems strange to me that Ricardo was kind of slow.
Yes.
He wasn't like crazy slow. I mean, they're both not really that fast. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Yes.
But Ricardo seemed very slow, and that was not. It's not a good sign for VCarb.
Not at all.
And definitely a bad sign for Ricardo if he wants to keep that seat.
Yes.
I have heard possibly part of the reason that Yuki is there is because of Honda. And Honda wants to have a Japanese driver on the team.
Okay.
So that might be kind of part of the reason why Yuki's still around. But Yuki's often outperforming Ricardo.
Yes.
So especially like last season we saw that a lot, and I know Ricardo didn't get a ton of race time last season, but still.
Yes.
And this season so far, obviously he did not perform in this race. But it's a little hard to say with the team orders.
Well, I could definitely see that both the VCarb spots could be open at some point in time.
I think so. I mean, I believe both their contracts are up after this year.
All right. So
So
something. Well, yeah.
yeah, I could see like becoming a problem for VCarb again. Just if they can't keep these drivers under control, that could definitely be something that affects them a lot in the future.
Yes, definitely.
So, what's your overall thoughts on the race?
I mean, after everything, after all that happened, we saw Max Verstappen winning the Bahrain Grand Prix. I mean, are we surprised though? Not really.
Not really.
Yeah. What did he win by? I think it was like 20.
It was a big margin.
Big margin. Yes, definitely. But I saw very strong showing from Perez because at the end of last season he was
Definitely.
struggling, and I feel like if he could just get his groove back together, that's just a really good look for him. Let's see.
I think, like you said, Stroll had a good recovery. Clearly, the Aston Martin is not as fast as it was last year.
No, it was not.
Alonso and Stroll were, I believe, 9th and 10th.
Alonso, yes, they were 9th and 10th. Well, yes, they were.
So scoring points, which is definitely good, but
definitely
still
good sign.
not where they were last season.
No. And another dynamic here, Sainz 4th, Leclerc 5th, and that is a big one right there.
3rd, I believe, and Leclerc 4th.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that was what it was. My bad.
No, that's all right.
But yes, that's definitely a development in the Sainz Leclerc dynamic at Ferrari.
That's good for Ferrari for sure. And I think those two, even though they're not going to be teammates next season,
yes,
I think there's not like hate between them.
There's not hate between
which
them,
is definitely a good thing for.
But I wouldn't blame Carlos for like putting himself over the team.
Well,
which
is
yes.
And of course, like you said earlier, with Sainz passing Leclerc a couple times, it shows that Sainz still has fight in him and he's still willing to go for it.
Yes.
But now he doesn't care as much about the team and he's more driving for himself.
100%.
But I do think that he seemed to have much more pace this year.
Yes. And as we mentioned before, Russell finishing in 5th, 2 spots above Hamilton, and we saw that Russell was not complaining much during the race, which I can see as preferential treatment towards him, which is very understandable as Hamilton is going to be leaving at the end of the season, but definitely something to look for as Russell continues do the season.
And then an alright finish for McLaren
Yes.
in 6th and 8th. It's definitely not where they were last season at this point, so that's good for them.
Yes.
But they're not where they were at the end of the season last year.
No, but they could still take that next step like they did last year.
So I think if they continue to develop like they did last year, I think they have a real shot at having a very good race car.
Yes, that is. I very much believe so, and I think the same thing with Aston Martin. Last season, they had I think they were the second fastest car in the grid at the beginning of the season. But I feel like if they have the tools they can to improve the car and actually become faster as well.
Yeah.
And I can totally see that happening with Alonso and Stroll leading.
Yeah, and the two Haas cars, even though Hülkenberg qualified in 10th place, not a great race for them.
No.
Part of it wasn't Hülkenberg's fault, with that early incident with Stroll and Bottas. So it was not his fault, but it's a shame for them.
We see Steak Joe. He finished P11. I mean, what are your thoughts on that one?
It's not. I think it's promising, but I'm worried that it's a false sense of hope that I'm feeling. It was an alright. Well, I wouldn't say it was a good first outing, but it was an alright first outing for Steak, or Sauber, whatever.
He did. He finished one place outside of points, so something to look out for.
Yeah, I suppose. I think it really comes down to the fact that the top 10 was a very strong top 10, right?
Yes.
It's really the top 10 is. It's the 2 Red Bulls, the 2 Ferraris, the 2 McLarens, and the 2 Aston Martins.
Yes.
So, and I don't remember if I said the 2 Mercedes. The 2 Mercedes.
Yes.
So that group, of course, is a very hard group to get into as a Sauber driver.
As a Sauber driver, yeah.
So I don't know that they'll really be able to get there if this kind of order stays how it is at the top.
And yes, we don't know about the reliability because Bottas also finished 19th, but that's also partly due to that really long pit stop that derailed the race. But we do have to see as well. And then we see the 2 Alpines finishing 17 and 18, which we're not surprised really much at all because Alpine so far has had way too many issues internally, and their car is just not up to par for what they need to do.
And then probably a pretty bad, I would say, start to the season for Williams.
Yeah.
As much as we want to see them do well, they're not doing well.
Yeah, and as American, it hurts my heart.
Yeah.
Logan Sargent again in P20.
Part of that, again, we have to go back to the fact, it wasn't entirely his fault, right? There was stuff with the steering wheel that was going on.
Yes.
And that's a big problem that Williams definitely has to sort out. But I think it is hard to see. It's hard to watch Logan being 20th place.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it for the Bahrain Grand Prix. But what's next on the list?
I think next we can move a little bit real quick to WEC.
All right.
It's Qatar, the Qatar race for WEC.
Mm-hmm.
So the Porsche was very dominant in this race in the hypercar class. The number 93 Peugeot, was quick, but eventually the Porsche was able to get past them.
Mm-hmm.
Then from then it was just dominance for the Porsche, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They also had a small bit of contact with a Lexus GT3 car, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the race.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it was a very flawless race from the Porsche Penske team.
Nice. Very well done to them.
And then so this was a pretty big win for Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
It's their first overall victory in WEC since I believe 2016 or 2017. Sorry.
Interesting.
So that's pretty good for them.
Yes.
So overall, pretty good. Definitely a good race for Porsche Penske.
Mm-hmm.
Another nice thing to see was the Hertz team Jota finishing up in second place.
Yes.
Which is kind of out of the ordinary for them. Last year, their performances were not very good.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good to see. And then in third place, the other Porsche Penske car. So definitely a very good start to the season for Porsche Penske.
Definitely.
And Porsche in general, because all the top three are Porsches.
Yes.
So it's very good to see for Porsche.
Very strong showing.
Yeah, and then the highest Ferrari was the AF Course Ferrari. Not the Ferrari factory team. It is just the AF Course. So it is the mostly yellow car.
Okay.
As opposed to the mostly red with the yellow stripes.
Yes.
The Toyota, which won the championship last year, down in 6th.
Oh, wow.
So not a good showing for them.
Yeah.
And the Alpine, the brand new hypercar Alpine, coming in 9th. So not great for them, but yeah, kind of okay. Well, 9th and 13th.
Yes.
So not the best start to the season. And the Lamborghini coming in 15th. So again, not a good race for them. Nope. I know they definitely would have wished for some better results out of that car in their first race, but you can't have everything you want. You know? Then we see for LMGT3, the Manthe team coming in first for them. Yes. And right behind them is the Heart of Racing, LMGT3. So a close race for them. But yeah, not much they could do to really get any higher than that.
Yes.
And then as we move down, we actually see the Isata Fraschini. I'm sorry if I pronounced it, if I totally butchered that.
Yeah.
But the brand new team to WEC and Hypercar, not a good race for them at all. They're behind multiple GT3 cars. Or LMGT3 cars, sorry. But still.
I mean, new team though. So
but still, you would think they would do better than that.
I think.
You're right, it is hard to say, but still that's not good for them. And then honestly, it was a good race to watch. Of course, it's a long race.
Yes, 100%.
Right, but it was a nice race to watch overall. I did not watch all of it because I'm not insane. So I don't know as much about it compared to Bahrain, of course. But I think it was a nice race to watch.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of Paddock and Track. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys. It's been fun.
Yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you for the next one.
Goodbye.